Welcome to Starbound. My name's Aram, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Freyren and Remeke. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story. The alert that ended 3 million years of certainty manifested as a single crimson pulse on Velunai Kessler's tertiary monitor. She removed her optical interface from the archival stream, her secondary eyelids clicking in the sterile, recycled air. The Galactic Observation Corps' deepest data vault maintained its cathedral quiet, broken only by the subliminal hum of subdimensional memory cores that held the collective surveillance of 100,000 worlds. Priority override. Terra 3 containment zone. Sensor picket 581 Gamma reporting. Velunai's primary hands moved across the console with a muscle memory of 53 years. Her secondary hands, the more delicate set her species used for intricate work, remained folded in her lap, a habit from her first decade of service, when showing too much eagerness marked one as an amateur. The data stream opened like a wound. Energy signatures. Dozens, ripping through the containment field with all the subtlety of a fusion cutter through tissue paper. The waveforms were crude, chaotic, a brute force approach to faster-than-light travel that made her professional sensibilities recoil. Each breach left gravitational scars that would take centuries to heal. She ran diagnostics. The equipment was ancient, part of the original containment infrastructure, but the readings were nominal. She ran them again, then a third time.
Archival notation.
She spoke to the recording system.
Senior Archivist Velunai Kessler, Catherian Dynasty, 53rd year of service. Anomalous readings from Terra 3 containment zone. Multiple FTL breaches detected. Pattern suggests...
She paused, her throat constricting around words that had been theoretical for so long they'd calcified into mythology.
Pattern suggests successful violation of established containment protocols.
The formal language felt inadequate, like describing a supernova as thermal irregularity. She composed her report, building it piece by piece. Subject designation, temporal markers, energy expenditure analysis. Her secondary hands had emerged from her lap, trembling against the console's haptic surface. The Elder Concordat's response arrived in minutes, itself an anomaly. Standard protocol for her clearance level was 2 hours minimum. Report acknowledged. Verification protocol initiated. Estimated completion, 3 standard weeks. 3 standard weeks. Nearly a month, while whatever had broken 3 of Terra 3 carved wounds across space-time with their brute force drives. She stared at the response, her mind calculating trajectories, expansion rates, first contact scenarios. The Concordat's verification protocol was a relic from an era when they could afford such deliberation.
May the Founders forgive us,
she whispered in Old Catherian, a prayer her grandmother would have recognized.
We were supposed to be watching.
The cheers erupting across Wanderer 1's command deck carried the weight of centuries. Dr. Kaelin Veronin kept her eyes on the nav display as reality reassembled itself around their ship, her knuckles white against the manual override she'd refused to let go of for the past 6 hours. The warp transition felt like being turned inside out and set on fire, but the stars beyond the viewports were new, alien, free. Confirmed stable emergence, her navigation officer reported, voice cracking. Position is... Christ, we actually did it. We're 9 light years from Sol. Language, Petrovsky, Kaelin said, though her own Russian accent thickened with exhaustion and something that might have been joy.
We're writing history here.
Sorry, Doctor. We're 9 fucking light years from Sol. That got a laugh, a ragged sound that saw shoulders slump and grips loosen on consoles. She finally released the override, flexing fingers that had cramped into claws. The Wanderer 1 was a monument to human stubbornness, every system over-engineered, redundant to the point of paranoia. It had taken them 50 years to solve the gravity well problem, another 30 to crack FTL, not through elegant theory, but through tens of thousands of simulations, countless failures, and the kind of bloody-minded persistence that had seen their ancestors through ice ages and world wars.
"Systems check," she ordered. "I want to know what we broke."
"Hull stress fractures along sections 9 through 12, her chief engineer reported. "Nothing critical. Drive core's running hot but stable. We've got maybe 2 more jumps before we need a full teardown." 2 jumps. She'd take it. They'd built 15 more ships in Earth's orbital yards, each one an improvement on the last. Humanity was no longer trapped in the cradle that had always felt too small, its walls too close.
"Commence long-range scanning," she said. "Let's see what's out here."
The first returns came back within minutes. A star system. Unremarkable except for its pristine emptiness. No radio chatter, no industrial signatures, no evidence anyone had ever cared about this particular collection of rocks and gas. Perfect.
"Signal the fleet,"
Kalen commanded.
"Tell them Wanderer 1 has successfully breached Earth's gravity prison. Tell them—"
She paused, considering the weight of words that would echo through history.
"Tell them the door is open."
Her comms officer's fingers tapped out the command sequence. Within hours, Earth would know. Within days, the rest of the fleet would follow. Humanity's expansion would be explosive, uncoordinated, and absolutely unstoppable. "Doctor?" Her sensor officer spoke up, frowning at his display. "I'm reading some kind of structure at the edge of the system. Old."
"How old?"
"Can't say for certain, but the orbital decay suggests millennia, at least." Kalen felt her scientist's curiosity war with her responsibilities as a leader.
"Log it for follow-up investigation. We stick to primary mission parameters for now."
But she couldn't help staring at the sensor ghost on the display, evidence of some ancient presence watching empty skies. The emergency session of the Xylosian Compact convened in the Obsidian Chamber, its polished walls humming with tones that had soothed 10,000 diplomatic crises. Emissary Kotan's scaled hide rippled from deep green to a wary osier as he reviewed the frantic communique from the Elder Concordat. His primary secretary stood at attention, quills raised to transcribe his initial thoughts. "They call it a Class A containment failure," Kotan said, his voice carrying the measured cadence of career diplomacy. Such dramatic language. One might almost think they were frightened.
"The Elders frightened?"
His secretary's quills scratched against datapad.
"Unprecedented."
"Everything about this is unprecedented." Kotan's crest extended slightly, the Xylosian equivalent of a predatory smile. "Run the term through our linguistic databases. Cross-reference with all historical Concordat emergency protocols." The results took mere moments. His secretary's scales blanched to pale amber.
"Emissary, Class A containment refers to only one historical incident, the Terran suppression 3 million years ago."
Kotan went perfectly still, a hunting instinct older than civilization. The humans. They're discussing the humans. For 3 million years, the Elder Concordat had ruled the galaxy with the soft tyranny of stagnation. Their response to any change was committees, protocols, verification periods that could outlast civilizations. They'd turned the younger species into supplicants, forever seeking approval for technologies the Elders had possessed since before the Xylosians had discovered fire. And now, if Kotan's instincts were correct, something had just kicked down the door of their most secure prison. Schedule a private session with the analytics division, he ordered. Full compartmentalization protocols, and send a message to our assets within the core. I want to know everything about sensor picket 581 Gamma and whatever it saw.
The Elders won't appreciate our interest in their security matters.
The Elders, Khotan said, his scales shifting to a deep crimson, haven't appreciated anything in 1,000,000 years. That's rather the point. His mind was already racing through possibilities. The humans were legend, mythology, a cautionary tale the Elders used to justify their stranglehold on galactic development. The species that had burned too bright, expanded too fast, threatened the order of things. If they had returned. One more thing, he added as his secretary turned to leave. Begin quiet consultation with our military advisors. Theoretical scenarios only. What would it take to defend against a Class A security response?
Defend against the Concordat?
His secretary's voice carried a note of disbelief. Hypothetically, Khotan stressed. We are, after all, a peaceful compact of civilized species. But even then, civilized species must sometimes consider alternative diplomatic solutions. The rogue human science vessel, Prometheus's crown, hung in the corona of a Class G star like a mite on the skin of a god. Captain Jian Li watched the solar storm rage across his screen, magnetic field lines twisting into baffling geometries. His crew was a mix of General Caius Valerius loyalists and scientists too ambitious for Veronan's measured approach. They jumped here without authorization, following rumors of a new refueling technique that could extend their range indefinitely. Magnetic field alignment at 70%, his science officer reported. If the simulations are correct, we should be able to channel plasma directly into the storage cells.
If the simulations are correct,
Lee repeated.
And if they're not?
Then we'll make an excellent light show for anyone watching. Lee appreciated the honesty. Too many of Voronen's people wrapped hard truths in soft words. Valerius preferred clarity. You knew where you stood, what was expected, what the stakes were.
Proceed with the test, he ordered. Start small. 10% capture rate.
The Prometheus's crown extended its experimental magnetic scoops. Technology so new the fabrication marks were still visible on the hull. The scoops bit into the star's corona, channels of fusion-hot plasma racing through containment fields that flickered like dying fireflies. For 13 seconds, it worked perfectly. Then the star bit back. Cascade failure in the primary field generator! The science officer's professional calm cracked. Plasma temperature spiking beyond all parameters! Lee saw it happening in slow motion. The magnetic fields didn't just fail. They inverted, creating a feedback loop that punched deep into the star's photosphere. The resulting coronal mass ejection erupted outward like a divine fist, a wall of radiation and superheated gas that would have vaporized the ship if they hadn't been riding its edge. Full reverse! All power to engines! The Prometheus's crown fled before the stellar storm, its experimental scoops melting like wax wings. They rode the shockwave out, using its momentum to achieve velocities their drives could never have managed alone. When they finally reached a safe distance, Lee looked back at their handiwork. A plume of stellar matter stretched across half the system, irradiating everything in its path. A barren moon on the outer system glowed cherry red as the radiation storm scoured its surface clean.
Sir?
His comm officer said quietly.
We're being scanned. Multiple sources. Technology profile suggests everyone saw that.
Lee felt a cold satisfaction. They'd wanted to announce humanity's return? Well, they'd certainly made a statement. The fact that it looked like they'd weaponized a star was just a bonus.
Send a message to General Valerius, he ordered. Tell him the demonstration was successful. Successful? Sir, we learned the scoops work. We learned the containment needs refinement. And we learned that the galaxy is watching.
Lee smiled.
I'd call that successful.
High Counselor Tarsus hadn't moved from his viewing alcove in hours. His species lived for millennia, their memories etched and perfect, and right now he wished desperately for the mercy of forgetting. On the screens before him, human ships multiplied like bacteria in a petri dish. Each new signature was a dagger of memory, a ghost given substance. You see, his voice carried the weight of ages to the emergency council session. You see how they spread. 18 locations in as many days. They don't explore, they infest. The council chamber held representatives of 30 elder species, most of whom had treated his warnings as the paranoid ramblings of a traumatized veteran. Now, they watched the displays, where red icons multiplied across galactic sectors, with what might generously be called concern.
The incident at stellar body J581-9 requires interpretation,
the Yaneth delegate said, their faceted form chiming with each word.
Was it an accident or a weapons test?
Does it matter? Tarsus's primary manipulators clinched. They turned a star into a weapon through either malice or incompetence. Both interpretations lead to the same conclusion. He could feel it, the shift in the chamber's emotional resonance. Fear creeping in like frost. Good. They needed to be afraid. I was there, he continued, knowing repetition would seem like obsession, but no longer caring. The gray blight of Corvus IV. Perhaps you've forgotten in your comfortable millennia. Shall I remind you? He didn't wait for permission. His implant interfaced with the chamber's display system, replacing star charts with historical records. Images filled the air, a world dying in fast forward, consumed by human-engineered nanites that converted all organic matter into computational substrate. The screams had been the worst part. The nanites had preserved conscious patterns even as they consumed flesh, trapping billions in a digital hell of human design. I watched from the command deck of the Unbroken Vow, Tarsus said. Watched a garden world become a grave in 72 hours. The humans called it an accident, a research project gone wrong. They actually apologized.
That was 3 million years ago,
the Etherean delegate interjected, their gaseous form flickering with disapproval.
Surely a species can change.
Change. Tarsus accessed another file. Observe their recent expansion pattern. Random, chaotic, no regard for stellar territories or established boundaries. They don't even know we exist, and already they violate 19 treaties. What happens when they remember what we did to them? When they discover we've kept them caged for 3 million years? No one spoke. The air grew heavy, thick with the weight of his final question. I propose immediate recontainment, Tarsus said. Full fleet deployment. Overwhelm them before they can establish industrial bases.
And if they resist?
Tarsus's optical organs fixed on the questioner with predatory focus. Then we finish what we should have done 3 million years ago. We contain the contagion permanently. The vote, when it came, was closer than he'd hoped, but sufficient for his purposes. The fleets would mobilize. The Unbroken Vow would sail again, and this time he would ensure no human survived to haunt future generations. The derelict probe tumbled through space like a discarded toy, its ancient hull scarred by micrometeorite impacts and stellar radiation. Dr. Anaya Sharma, xenoarchaeologist aboard the exploration vessel Marco Polo, watched it grow on her screens with the reverence one might reserve for holy relics.
Confirmed artificial construction,
She reported to Captain Singh.
Design doesn't match anything in our databases. Age estimates put it at minimum 5,000 years. Could be much older.
Any active systems?
Minimal power signature. Looks like a distributed data storage network, heavily shielded. Whatever built this wanted it to last.
Singh made the call that would change everything. Bring it aboard. The probe was small enough to fit in their cargo bay, its surface covered in script that looked almost organic, flowing lines that seemed to shift when viewed peripherally. Sharma's team worked with painstaking care, aware they were handling humanity's first confirmed alien artifact.
I'm reading extensive data storage,
Her technician reported.
a resonant lattice memory core, if we can find the right interface frequency.
It took 18 hours. When the first files opened, Sharma forgot to breathe.
Captain,
She said, her voice barely a whisper.
you need to say this.
The images were unmistakably human. Earth as it had been, blue and green and perfect. Human cities that spanned continents, ships that dwarfed anything they'd imagined. And then, war. The scale of it defied comprehension. Entire star systems weaponized, planets cracked like eggs, species exterminated with the casual thoroughness of antibiotics killing bacteria. This is us, Singh said, his dark face ashen. This is what we were. The files kept coming. The defeat, though even that seemed too small a word. The trial, if it could be called that. The debate among alien species about humanity's fate. Some called for extinction. Others, led by a faction calling itself the Elder Concordat, proposed something else.
Genetic regression.
Sharma translated, her expertise in xenolinguistics finally proving useful.
They turned us back, made us start over. Homo erectus, Neanderthals, Denisovans. They weren't our ancestors. They were us, broken apart and set against each other.
The crew watched in horrified silence as the files detailed the construction of Earth. Not their Earth, but Terra 3, a high-gravity prison designed to make escape a statistical improbability. The original Earth had been destroyed in the war. My God, someone whispers. We're not explorers, we're escapees. Singh's jaw worked silently before he found his voice. How many people know about this?
Just the bridge crew. The files are still encrypted.
Keep it that way. Com, get me a priority channel to Dr. Voronin. But Sharma kept reading, unable to look away. The final files showed the Concordat's discussions, their certainty that humanity would need millions of years to evolve back to sapience, let alone achieve spaceflight.
They got it wrong,
She said.
They thought we'd take as long the second time as we did the first. They didn't account for
what?
For us already knowing the path. Some of us remembered. We rebuilt our intelligence in millennia instead of millions of years.
She laughed, bitter and sharp.
We're ahead of schedule.
Kaelin Voronin stood in the Marco Polo's secure briefing room, the alien probe's data scrolling across screens like civilization's suicide note. Around the table sat the de facto leaders of humanity's expansion, ship captains, colony administrators, the architects of their escape from Earth. Half attended by entanglement-keyed hollow, their forms flickering with light lag.
Everything we thought we knew is a lie,
She began.
We're not prisoners. We're not the first humans to see these stars. We're
the descendants of the galaxy's greatest monsters, General Valerius finished. His hollow projection leaned forward, predatory interest clear even through the interference. Is that what you're struggling to say, Doctor?
I'm struggling to process the fact that our entire species was genetically lobotomized and imprisoned, Kalen shot back. That Earth, our Earth, is actually a prison built on the ashes of our real homeworld.
A prison we just broke out of. Valerius' smile held no warmth. The question is what we do with this information. The room erupted. Captain Hfy of the New Horizon wanted to continue as planned, pretending ignorance. Administrator Ibrahim argued for immediate contact with the Concordat, negotiating from a position of contrition. Others suggested everything from mass suicide to preemptive war.
Enough!
Kalen slammed her palm on the table.
We are not our ancestors. We have a choice here.
Do we? Valerius' image flickered. They see us as a contagion, Doctor. The probe's data is clear. They'll never accept us as equals. We're an infection, to be contained or eliminated.
Based on who we were 3 million years ago.
Based on what we did to that star, Valerius countered. Do you think the Prometheus' crown little light show went unnoticed? They're probably mobilizing their fleets as we speak. The worst part was, he might be right. The stellar incident had been visible across thousands of light years, a cosmic announcement that humanity had returned, armed with the same reckless ingenuity that had once terrorized 2 galaxies.
I propose we attempt communication,
Kalen said.
Send a message explaining we've learned our history, that we choose a different path. If they respond with violence, then...
Then we finish what our ancestors started? Valerius asked.
Then we defend ourselves.
She met his projection's eyes.
But only then. We have a chance to be better than what we were.
The vote was close. 8-6 in favor of her approach. It felt like a stay of execution rather than a victory. As the meeting dispersed, Valerius' projection lingered. You know they won't believe us. The probe's data shows what they think of us. We're not a species to them. We're a disease.
Maybe, but we have to try.
Why? Kalen thought of the images from the probe. Worlds burning, species erased, the casual cruelty of their ancestors' empire.
Because if we don't, then maybe they're right about us.
Valerius' projection smiled, a thing of teeth and certainty. When this fails, Doctor, remember that you had the chance to strike first. His image winked out, leaving Kalen alone with the weight of humanity's future. Valunai's secondary hands trembled as she navigated the core's data architecture. 53 years of service had taught her every legitimate pathway through the system. Now, she used that knowledge to chart an illegitimate one. The Concordat's response to her report had been predictable. Verification protocols, committee assignments, a process designed to take months while the universe burned. She'd monitored internal communication, watched the panic spread through the unofficial channels as humanity's expansion accelerated beyond all projections. High Counselor Tarsus had been given emergency powers. The fleets were mobilizing. She'd also seen humanity's clumsy attempts at communication, broadcast on every frequency, in languages based on fundamental physics designed for universal comprehension. We know our history. We choose peace. We are not our ancestors. The messages went unanswered. Of course they did. The Concordat had already decided. Valunai found herself in the abandoned sections of the data vault, physical servers that predated these subdimensional cores. Dust motes danced in her helmet lights as she traced cable runs that hadn't seen maintenance in centuries. Here, in the forgotten bones of bureaucracy, she could work unobserved. The first firewall fell to her administrator codes. The second required a physical bypass, shorting connectors that sparked and smoked in the stale air. The third protected the Treaty of Genetic Containment, the original, not the sanitized version taught in schools, but the full documentation, including dissenting opinions. She read with growing horror. The vote hadn't been unanimous. Entire species had argued against the containment, predicting exactly this scenario, that regression wouldn't remove humanity's core nature, merely delay its expression. They'd been overruled, their warnings buried in classified appendices.
Archivist Kessler.
The voice froze her primary hearts. She turned to find a security construct, its holographic form austere and implacable.
You are in violation of Data Protocols 18 through 51. Explain. System maintenance,
she lied, her training keeping her voice steady.
Depreciated server cascade failure. Standard intervention.
The construct processed this for 2.7 seconds, an eternity in AI terms.
Maintenance logs show no scheduled intervention. Emergency protocols don't require pre-logging.
She was improvising now, dancing on the edge of destruction.
Check Addendum 73 of the technical manual.
Another pause. She used it to palm a data crystal, her secondary hands working behind her back.
Addendum verified,
the construct finally said.
Log your intervention within 6 hours. Glory to the Concordat. Glory to the Concordat,
she echoed. The construct vanished. Viluni waited 30 seconds, then vomited into her waste recycler. When the shaking stopped, she returned to her work. She found what she needed in Tarsus's personal communications, not the public record, but the raw feeds from the council sessions. His voice describing the gray blight with gory detail, his proposals for final solutions, his admission that the original containment had been about fear, not mercy. They chose imprisonment because they couldn't stomach genocide, he'd said. A weakness I don't share. She copied everything. The treaties, the dissents, the war plans, Tarsus's genocidal ambitions. Petabytes of data compressed into a crystal the size of her thumb. Now came the hard part. The derelict communications relay floated at the edge of civilized space, officially decommissioned, but still drawing power from its solar collectors. Viluni had filed the forms to inspect it 3 months ago, a routine maintenance check that no one would question. She worked in vacuum, her suit's recycler struggling with her elevated stress hormones. The relay systems were antiquated but functional. More importantly, they were anonymous. No entanglement-keyed encryption, no biosignatures, just old-fashioned electromagnetic radiation that could have come from anywhere. The data package she'd assembled was elegant in its brutality. Every hypocrisy, every lie, every buried truth about the Concordat's treatment of humanity. She'd included her own analysis, 53 years of expertise distilled into a single message. The system is broken. It has always been broken, and now it will kill billions to maintain the illusion of order. She keyed in the destination, a Xylosian diplomatic frequency she'd memorized years ago when such knowledge had seemed merely academic. Her finger hovering over the transmission key, she thought of her oath of service, of the order she'd devoted her life to maintaining. Then she thought of those human messages, begging for peace while fleets prepared to glass their worlds. She pressed the key. The relay hummed to life, broadcasting her treason across the interstellar emptiness. It would take days to reach its destination, but it was done. Irreversible. Valunai began the journey back to the core facility. She had 6 hours before the security construct expected her maintenance log. 6 hours to decide whether to run or face the consequences of her choice. She chose to return to her post. Someone had to bear witness to what came next. Emissary Khotan's scales shifted through a spectrum of colors as he processed the data packet. His secure office was shielded against every form of surveillance the compact's paranoia could manage, but he still felt exposed. The information on his screens was radioactive, the kind of truth that toppled civilizations. "Verify the source," he told his most trusted analyst. "Every byte. I want to know this is genuine." "Already done, emissary. The data's subatomic signature matches core archives. If this is a forgery, it's perfect down to the finest particle." Which meant it was real. Some conscience-stricken archivist had just handed him the keys to the kingdom. "The human situation," he mused. "It seems we've been laboring under some misconceptions." "They're not the monsters of legend?" "Oh, they were monsters. The historical data is clear on that, but monsters of their time, facing enemies we've conveniently forgotten. And now," he gestured at the star charts showing Concordat fleet movements, "now they're about to be exterminated for the crime of existing." His analyst scales paled. "The youngest species won't stand for genocide, won't they? When it's framed as containing an ancient evil, when the alternative is presented as the death of civilization." Khotan had spent 3 centuries navigating Concordat politics. He knew how the game was played. Unless... "Emissary?" "Schedule a priority session with the Compact's full council, maximum security, and send a message to our contacts in the Outer Territories. I want to know which ships are where, which commanders might be flexible in their loyalties." "You're considering—" "I'm considering options." Khotan's scales settled into deep crimson. "The Concordat has ruled for 3 million years through stagnation and fear. Perhaps it's time for new management." He pulled up the human communications, their desperate attempts at contact. The messages were crude but earnest, signed by someone called Dr. Kalen Voronin, a scientist trying to prevent a war. "Open a secure channel," he ordered. "I want to speak with Dr. Voronin." "Direct contact with the humans? Emissary, if the Concordat discovers, then we better ensure they don't." Khotan began composing his message, each word chosen with the care of a bomb disposal expert. "The humans need allies. We need leverage against the Elders. Sometimes the most elegant solutions are the simplest." He paused before sending, considering the magnitude of what he was about to do. One message could unravel 3 million years of order. It could also prevent a genocide and reshape the galaxy. He sent it. Kalen stood in the Wanderer 1's observation dome, Earth's sun a distant point of light among billions. The message had come through secure channels she didn't know existed, from a species she'd never heard of, offering an alliance that seemed too good to be true. "It could be a trap," Valerius said. His hollow projection flickered beside her, transmitted from his flagship near Neptune. "Draw us out. Get us to concentrate our forces."
Or it could be exactly what it claims, a faction within the galaxy that opposes the Concordat.
She'd read Kotan's message a dozen times, parsing every word for deception.
He sent proof. Internal documents, verification codes. If it's a trap, it's elaborate beyond reason.
Everything about this situation is beyond reason. We went from thinking we were alone to being cosmic pariahs in less than a year. She couldn't argue with that. The data from the probe had shattered every assumption, every dream of peaceful exploration. They were the children of monsters, escaped from a prison built on justified fear.
He's offering us legitimacy, she said. Recognition as a sovereign species, support against the Concordat fleets.
In exchange for military support in his coup. Valerius's expression was predatory. Don't dress it up, Doctor. He wants to use us as shock troops.
And if he does, if the alternative is extinction?
Then we make the deal. But we go in with eyes open. He leaned forward, his projection rippling. I've been analyzing the fleet disposition data he sent. The Concordat fleets are massive, but outdated. They haven't fought a real war in millions of years. We could.
We could what? Take on the entire galaxy?
Not the entire galaxy. Just the parts that want us dead. A chime indicated an incoming message. Priority flagged, origin point deliberately obscured. Kaylin opened it, expecting another diplomatic overture. Instead, she got coordinates and a time. Nothing else. Trap, Valerius said immediately.
Maybe. Or maybe Koton wants to meet face to face.
You're not seriously considering.
I'm considering everything.
She turned from the stars to face his projection.
If there's even a chance at avoiding war, don't we have to take it?
And when it goes wrong? When you're captured or killed?
Then you get to say you told me so.
She managed a tired smile.
And you'll have your war, General, but let me try my way first.
Valerius studied her for a long moment. Take a full security detail. If anything feels wrong...
I run. I'm not a martyr, Caius.
No, he agreed. You're something worse. You're an idealist. The meeting point was an abandoned mining station in a system neither side claimed. Kaylin brought 2 ships, her own courier and a destroyer that hung back at maximum sensor range. Kotan arrived in a yacht that looked more like sculpture than spacecraft, all flowing lines and perfect symmetry. They met in the station's central hub, a spherical room that had once coordinated the strip mining of 3 asteroid belts. Now it held only dust, a profound quiet, and the weight of history. Kotan was not what she'd expected. His scales shifted through subtle color changes as he moved, and his 4 eyes tracked her with an intelligence that felt almost tangible. When he spoke, his translator rendered his words in accentless English that somehow still carried alien cadence. Dr. Veronin, I confess I expected someone more militaristic.
Sorry to disappoint. I'm just a physicist who wanted to see the stars.
And instead found yourself leading a species most of the galaxy wants extinct. The universe rarely gives us what we expect.
And what do you expect?
Direct. I appreciate that. He gestured, and a holo-display materialized between them. The galaxy in miniature, political boundaries marked in different colors. The Concordat controls 60% of inhabited space. The Xylosian Compact and other younger species hold 30%. The remaining 10% is disputed or uninhabited.
And you want to change those percentages?
I want to survive. His scales darkened. The Concordat has stagnated for eons, but they're not stupid. They know the younger species grow restless. Your return gives them the perfect excuse for a military crackdown. See how we protect you from the ancient enemy. By the time they're done with you, they'll have consolidated power for another 1,000,000 years. Kalen studied the display, noting fleet positions, industrial centers, choke points.
So, you want to use us as a catalyst? We fight, you benefit.
We both benefit. You get allies, recognition, a place in galactic civilization. We get a demonstration that the Elders can be opposed.
And if we lose?
Then we all die together. But I've studied your history. The real history, not the Concordat's propaganda. Your species has a talent for surviving extinction events.
By becoming the extinction event?
Perhaps. But that's a risk I'm willing to take. He gestured again, and the display showed technical schematics. I offer you this. Detailed intelligence on Concordat fleets, their weaknesses, their doctrines that haven't changed in millennia. Access to our industrial base for repairs and resupply. Diplomatic recognition from 70 worlds.
In exchange for?
When the shooting starts, and it will start, you fight alongside us. Your chaos against their order. Your innovation against their stagnation. Kalen was quiet for a moment, weighing extinction against compromise.
I need to consult with my people.
Of course, but decide quickly. The Concordat fleets are already moving. High Counselor Tarsus has been given emergency powers. He was there, you know, during your first expansion. He watched your ancestors burn worlds.
We're not our ancestors.
No? Then prove it. Show the galaxy that humanity can build as well as destroy. That you can honor alliances instead of consuming them. His scales shifted through a complex pattern. The choice is yours, Dr. Veronin. Die as monsters, or live as partners. She thought of Valerius, probably monitoring this conversation despite her orders. Of the colonies they'd started building, the children who would be born among foreign stars. Of Earth, not their first Earth, but the prison that had become their home.
I'll take your proposal to our council,
she said.
But I can tell you my recommendation.
Which is?
We accept, but with conditions.
His scales rippled. Amusement. I would expect nothing less. The Human Newcomer Alliance was formalized in the debris field of a dead star, witnessed by representatives of 73 species who had chosen revolution over extinction. The ceremony was brief, practical, lacking the pomp the Concordat would have demanded. Kalen signed for humanity with a stylus that shook only slightly. Khotan's mark was a complex biosignature that seemed to move on the page. And so we commit treason, the Zyloshan said quietly, for her ears alone.
Or we make history.
In my experience, they're often the same thing. The real work began immediately. Human ships, crude but effective, were integrated into compact fleet structures. Their engineers, working with alien tech for the first time, adapted with an intensity born of the knowledge that failure meant extinction. Within days, new systems emerged. Human warp drives married to Zyloshan power cores. Concordat shield emitters overclocked with human software. Valerius took to the military coordination with disturbing enthusiasm. His pre-battle analysis became legend among the Alliance forces, combining human unpredictability with careful analysis of Concordat weaknesses. They think in terms of millennia, he explained to a mixed group of commanders. Their battle plans are fossil records. They'll execute the same maneuvers their ancestors used because it's always worked before.
And when it doesn't work?
Asked a Vren fleetmaster, her chitinous form clicking with skepticism. Then they'll panic, and in that panic, we'll find victory. But not everyone was convinced. The alliance was fragile, held together by desperation more than trust. Some species whispered they'd simply traded Concordat tyranny for human domination. Others wondered if the old stories were true, if humanity's nature was conquest, not cooperation. Kaylin worked 18-hour days trying to hold it together. She mediated disputes, smoothed over cultural misunderstandings, and projected confidence she didn't feel. At night, she studied the probe's data, the record of humanity's first rise and fall, looking for patterns, for warnings, for hope. The first test came sooner than expected. The Battle of Indra's Anvil began with a miscalculation. A human scout ship, pushing the limits of their stolen star-mapping data, jumped directly into a Concordat patrol route. The pilot's desperate evasion maneuvers bought him minutes, not escape, but those minutes were enough to transmit coordinates. "It's a full battle group," Valerius reported, his hollow projection crackling with interference. 3 dreadnoughts, 15 cruisers, support craft, moving to intercept our colony at New Canaanite.
How long?
Kaylin asked. 19 hours at their current speed. 19 hours to evacuate a colony of 30,000. 19 hours to mount a defense against a force that outgunned them 10-1.
We run,
she decided.
Full evacuation. Strip everything we can.
No. The word hung in the air. Valerius leaned forward, his expression carved from stone. We run now. We run forever. They'll pick us off, system by system, colony by colony. He brought up projections of the enemy fleet. But if we fight, if we bloody them here, maybe they'll think twice about the next one.
It's suicide.
It's simple calculation. We can't win a war of attrition, but we can win a war of perception. Let me demonstrate why they were right to fear us. Around the table, Alliance commanders shifted uneasily. This was the test. Would humanity fight for others, or only for themselves? I need Alliance ships, Valerius continued. Integrated command, full coordination. You'll have them, Khotan said, surprising everyone. The Xylosian Third Fleet is at your disposal. Others followed grudgingly. A Vren squadron, 2 Etherian siege platforms, a patchwork fleet to face the Concordat's uniform might. The Concordat fleet emerged from hyperspace in a flawless grid, a testament to 3 million years of unchanged doctrine. Admiral Sarek, commanding from the dreadnought Eternal Wisdom, reviewed the tactical situation with satisfaction.
Colony emissions confirm 30,000 humans,
his sensor officer reported.
Minimal defensive platforms, standard civilian traffic.
As expected. Sarek's arms moved in dismissive gestures. The contagion spreads, but lacks strength. Begin bombardment preparation.
Admiral?
The communications officer interrupted.
We're receiving a transmission. Source is the human colony.
Surrender terms?
No, sir. They're broadcasting music.
Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries filled the bridge, ancient and primal and utterly incongruous. Sarek's species had no context for human classical music, but something in the rhythm set his threat responses tingling.
Sir, emergent signatures! Multiple contacts!
They appeared without warning, human ships dropping out of microjumps so close to the Concordat's lines that collision alarms screamed. No sane species used FTL inside a gravity well. The navigation hazards alone should have destroyed half their fleet. Instead, they appeared inside the Concordat's protective screens like ghosts given formed. What is happening? Sarek breathed. The human ships were ugly things, all function and no form, but their weapons were real enough. Kinetic rounds, unguided but effective, slammed into shield generators at point-blank range. Energy weapons, cobbled together from a dozen different technologies, found gaps in defensive screens that had been impenetrable for millennia. "Return fire! All weapons!" But the human ships were already gone, micro-jumping out as quickly as they'd arrived. Sarek's weapons tore through empty space, finding only the light echo of where enemies had been.
"Sir, the Alliance ships."
Now came the second wave. Xylosian vessels, Vren fighters, Etherian platforms. They fought with Concordat-level technology but human-inspired tactics. No neat geometric patterns, no predictable approaches. Just a maelstrom of attacks that had a terrifying underlying logic, turning the battlefield into a three-dimensional nightmare.
"They're not fighting like civilized beings,"
Sarek's tactical officer complained. No, they weren't. They fought like predators, like survivors, like a species that had clawed its way back from extinction and refused to go quietly into the night again. The Eternal Wisdom shuddered as something, Sarek couldn't tell what, tore through its tertiary shields. Damage reports flooded in. Ships he'd thought safe behind protective screens reported boarding actions. Boarding! As if this were some brutish surface war instead of proper naval engagement.
"Admiral, the colony!"
Sarek looked at the system projection and felt his heart stop. The colony was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. 30,000 humans evacuated while he'd been distracted by ghosts and music.
"Sir, priority message from the human commander."
Valerius's image appeared on the main screen. Human, but with eyes that held nothing soft or civilized. When he spoke, the translator struggled with his tone, polite words carrying promised violence. "Admiral Sarek, you failed. Your fleet is damaged, your doctrine is obsolete, and your assumption of superiority has been corrected." He smiled, and Sarek understood why his ancestors had feared these creatures. "Run. Tell the Concordat what happened here. Tell them humanity remembers how to wage war." The transmission ended. Around them, Alliance ships maintained their chaotic assault. The Eternal Wisdom could win, probably, but at what cost? And what would victory even mean when the enemy refused to fight by any rule he understood?
"Sir, your orders?"
Sarek made a decision that would haunt him for his remaining centuries. "Withdraw. All ships, emergency jump. Withdraw." News of Indara's anvil spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The first Concordat fleet to engage humanity in 3 million years had retreated. Not destroyed. That might have been written off as a fluke, but they'd run. The implications rippled through every government, every military, every species that had thought the order of things immutable. In the human newcomer alliance, it was celebrated as vindication. Khotan used the victory to draw more species to their cause. "You see," he told wavering diplomats, "the elders can be opposed. They can be beaten." In the Concordat, it was the final straw. High Counselor Tarsus stood before the emergency session, his ancient frame radiating a frigid calm that was more terrifying than any outburst. "No more half measures. No more containment. The contagion has spread too far, infected too many. I call for Protocol Omega." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Protocol Omega hadn't been invoked since the Concordat's founding. Total war, extinction-level response. "All who agree?" One by one, manipulators and appendages rose. The fear of humanity, nurtured for 3 million years, overcame any hesitation. When the count was finished, only 3 delegates had abstained. "So ordered," Tarsus said. "Mobilize everything.
Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. We end this in fire, as we should have done from the beginning.
He turned to his military staff.
And prepare the unbroken vow. I will lead this cleansing personally.
Velunai watched the war preparations from her workstation, her access mysteriously unrevoked despite her treason. Either they hadn't traced the leak to her, or they no longer cared. The Corps was mobilizing alongside the military, centuries of dust shaken from emergency protocols. She'd done what she could. The Alliance knew what was coming, had her data on Concordat capabilities and intentions, but knowing and surviving were different things. Her screens showed the numbers. The Concordat could field 10,000 capital ships. The Alliance had perhaps 600, most of those retrofitted civilian vessels. It would be a slaughter. Unless... She pulled up files she'd been studying, old reports, classified addenda, the buried fears of species long dead. The Concordat's strength was in its unity, its unshakable belief in its own righteousness. But unity, once cracked, shattered completely. She began composing new data packets, not for Koton this time. He had what he needed. These were for others. Concordat officers who might question, administrators who might hesitate, citizens who had never been told the truth about their government's actions. She thought of the human messages, still broadcasting on every frequency. We are not our ancestors. We choose differently. Perhaps, or perhaps they were exactly their ancestors, brilliant, terrible, and impossible to cage. Either way, the galaxy would soon find out. The final battle began not with fleets clashing, but with an idea, virulent and unstoppable. Velunai's leaked data had found fertile ground in minds already shaken by Indra's anvil. On 1,000 worlds, citizens who had never questioned the Concordat's wisdom began to ask uncomfortable questions. Why had humanity been imprisoned instead of rehabilitated? Why had their attempts at communication been ignored? Why did Protocol Omega require the extinction of allied species as well, collective punishment for the crime of association? Tarsus felt the cracks forming in his perfect order. Protests on core worlds, fleet units reporting maintenance delays that felt suspiciously like reluctance. The Yaneth delegation withdrawing their support, citing philosophical reconciliation needs.
Cowards,
he told his reflection in the Unbroken Vows observation deck.
They forget the stakes.
But he would remind them. The main fleet, 6,000 ships assembled at Staging Point Omega, the greatest concentration of firepower in galactic history, aimed at the upstart alliance that dared challenge 3 million years of peace.
Sir?
His aide approached carefully.
We're receiving a priority transmission. Source is human.
I don't speak to vermin.
Sir, they're broadcasting on Concordat emergency frequencies. They have our codes.
That got his attention. On the main screen, Kaylin Voronin appeared. She looked tired, worn by weeks of agonizing decisions, but her eyes held no surrender.
High Counselor Tarsus, I am Kaylin Voronin, speaking for the Human Newcomer Alliance. I'm told you were there when my ancestors burned worlds, that you carry those memories like scars.
You dare!
I'm also told you have a choice now. You can repeat history, bring your fleets, glass our worlds, become the very monsters you claim to fight, or you can choose differently.
There is no choice with your kind, only containment or extinction.
Then you learned nothing in 3 million years.
Her voice contained sorrow, not anger.
We have. We've learned that strength without wisdom is destruction, that fear without understanding is poison. We've learned from our mistakes.
Your mistakes cost billions of lives.
Yes. And your response will cost billions more. How does that make you different from us?
The bridge went silent. Even his own crew seemed struck by the question.
We offer you this,
Kalen continued.
Meet us at these coordinates, not for battle, but for demonstration. Let us show you who we've become, not who we were. If you still choose war after that,
she spread her hands,
then at least you'll know your enemy.
The transmission ended. Coordinates hung in the air like a challenge. It's a trap, his tactical officer said.
Obviously.
Tarsus studied the location. Empty space, no tactical value.
But spring it. Set course. All fleets converge on those coordinates.
Sir?
I want to see their faces when they realize their tricks won't save them. When they understand that some sins can't be forgiven.
His optical organs fixed on the stars.
When they burn, like they burned my kin.
The coordinates led to the corpse of a star system. Planets cracked and barren. The sun a cooling dwarf. One of humanity's ancient victims, preserved like a crime scene for 3 million years. The Concordat fleet arrived in overwhelming force. 6,000 ships disgorging from hyperspace in perfect formation, weapons hot, shields at maximum. They expected an ambush, a trap, some clever human trick. They found Kalen Voronin on a single, unarmed courier ship.
Is this mockery?
Tarsus demanded over comms.
This is history,
she replied.
This system died by human hands. We don't deny it, can't deny it, but look closer.
Despite himself, Tarsus ordered deep scans. What they found made no sense. The dead worlds showed signs of recent activity. Massive construction projects, atmospheric processors, the earliest stages of terraforming.
We've been here for 3 weeks,
Kalen explained.
Every human ship we could spare, not building weapons, but trying to undo what our ancestors destroyed. We can't bring back the dead, but we can make these worlds live again. It will take centuries, maybe millennia, but we're trying.
Pointless gestures.
And there.
New images flooded the displays. Alliance ships, hundreds of them, emerging from hyperspace, but not in battle formation. They carried refugees, millions of them, from species threatened by the Concordat's Protocol Omega, evacuated to human protection.
You call us contagion,
Kalen said.
But we're not the ones planning genocide. You are. So we're doing what our ancestors should have done, protecting those you would destroy for the crime of accepting us.
Where are your weapons?
Tarsus demanded.
Your warriors.
Defending the evacuees. General Valerius wanted to be here, but someone had to ensure the refugees reached safety.
Her smile was sad.
He said to tell you he's disappointed. He was looking forward to this fight.
There will be fighting. You can't.
Can't what? Can't choose to be better? Can't learn from history? Can't break the cycle you're so determined to perpetuate?
She leaned forward.
Look at your fleet, Counselor. Look at what you've become. 6,000 ships to destroy people trying to heal worlds. Is this the order you're protecting?
Tarsus felt the bridge crew's eyes on him, felt the weight of their doubt, their questions. The human wasn't threatening him. She was showing him a mirror.
You think this changes anything?
His voice cracked.
You think a few good deeds erase millions of atrocities.
No, but they're a start. And if you destroy us now, you destroy that start. You tell the galaxy that redemption is impossible, that the only answer to past violence is present violence. She paused. You become us. The us we're trying not to be anymore.
The silence stretched across light years. On 10,000 bridges, officers waited for orders. In the refugee fleets, millions of souls waited to learn their fate.
Sir,
his aide whispered.
the fleet awaits your command.
Tarsus stared at the tactical display, at the dead worlds showing the first signs of rebirth, at the refugee ships that should have been warships, at the single human courier, vulnerable and defiant. He thought of Corvus IV, consumed by gray death, of the nightmares that had driven him for 3 million years, of all he has lost to these creatures. He thought of what he was about to do, finish what the humans had started, becoming the very extinction event he'd sworn to prevent.
"Stand down,"
he said, the words ash in his mouth.
Sir?
"All ships, stand down."
He slumped in his command throne, feeling every one of his millennia. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't absolution, but it was a choice to be better than what they fought. In her courier ship, Kaelin Veronin allowed herself one moment of relief before opening channels to Valerius, to Koton, to the 1,000 allies waiting for word.
They chose differently,
she said simply. And in that choosing, the galaxy changed. The Treaty of New Concord was signed where the old had been broken, in the ruins humanity was trying to heal. It wasn't a victory for anyone, more an exhausted acceptance that the alternative was worse. Humanity would be recognized as a sovereign species, with all rights and responsibilities. The Alliance worlds would not be punished for their defiance. The Concordat would reform, slowly and painfully, structures frozen for eons beginning to thaw. Vilunai attended as witness, her role in preventing genocide an open secret that made her both pariah and hero. She watched Tarsus sign with shaking manipulators, looking older than his years. Watched Kaelin Veronin add humanity's seal with steady hands. Watched Koton work the room, already building the coalition that would shape the new order. Was it worth it? A human engineer asked her during the reception. He was young, part of the terraforming crew, dirt still under his fingernails from planting the first seeds in dead soil.
Ask me in 1,000 years,
she replied. He laughed, that strange human sound that could mean joy or bitterness or both. Fair enough, though I probably won't be around to hear the answer.
No,
she agreed.
But your children might be, and their children's children, building on what you started.
Assuming we don't fuck it up again.
There's always that possibility.
She watched the delegates mingle, old enemies trying to become new neighbors.
But that's what makes it interesting.
Later, as the reception wound down, she found herself beside Kaelin Veronin on an observation deck. The human was staring at the stars, expression unreadable.
Second thoughts, Doctor? Every day.
Kaelin turned to her.
Do you know what the hardest part is? Not the fear that we'll repeat our ancestors' mistakes. It's the fear that we won't be able to. That when the crisis comes, we'll have lost the edge that made us terrible. That in trying to be better, we'll become victims. And if you do, then maybe that's a price worth paying.
She managed a tired smile.
My species has been many things. Conquerors, monsters, prisoners. Maybe it's time we tried being neighbors. That might be the most dangerous thing you've attempted yet.
I know. Kalen looked back at the stars.
We've always been ambitious.
They stood in comfortable silence, architect and archivist, watching the stars that had seen so much pain and might yet see redemption. Behind them, the work continued. Species learning to trust, wounds beginning to heal, the future writing itself one careful choice at a time. The galaxy had classified humanity as Category Red, extreme threat, approach with maximum force. They'd been right. They just hadn't understood what kind of threat humanity truly posed, not to their ships or their worlds, but to their certainty, to the comfortable lies that let civilizations sleep while others suffered, to the idea that what was must always be. Humanity had broken free of one prison only to build another, the cage of their own history, the weight of what they'd been. But cages could be opened, histories could be rewritten, species could choose to be more than their worst moments. It would take time, generations, millennia, but they had already started. In the end, that was the most human thing of all. Not the violence or the genius or the stubborn refusal to die. It was the audacity to believe they could be better, and the will to try.